Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at how just one state, just one, could decide who wins the White House this election. You guys sent in some seriously interesting articles, including this one from the Washington Post. It's about a strategy, well, more like a last-ditch effort that Trump is using to try to win back the White House.
It's a long shot,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
but it really highlights how much power even one single electoral vote can have.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of wild when you think about it. The article zooms in on Nebraska, which, let's be real, most people wouldn't think of as a make-or-break state in an election.
Right, not your typical battleground state.
So what makes Nebraska so important all of a sudden?
Well, Nebraska, along with Maine, they have this unusual system when it comes to the Electoral College. Instead of giving all their electoral votes to whoever wins the state overall, like most states do.
Right, the winner-take-all thing.
Exactly, winner take all. But Nebraska and Maine, they actually divide some of those votes up based on which candidate wins in each congressional district.
Interesting. So even if one candidate wins the most votes across the whole state, the other candidate could still snag a few electoral votes by winning in certain areas.
Exactly. And that's what has Trump's team so fired up. They see a chance to maybe, just maybe, flip the election. See, the Omaha area, for example, it usually leans more towards the Democrats.
Makes sense.
If the Democratic candidate can win there, they could pick up one electoral vote, even if they lose Nebraska as a whole.
Wow, and that one electoral vote could be huge, especially in a tight election.
Absolutely. The article even says that if Kamala Harris wins those other key states, everyone's watching, like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, that one vote from Nebraska could be the deciding factor.
Seriously. That's wild. So we're saying there's a chance that a state most people don't even think about could determine the entire election.
It sounds crazy, right? But that's how our system works.
Yeah.
And it seems like Donald Trump, he's definitely picked up on this. He's been putting a lot of pressure on Nebraska to change its system before November.
Really? Trying to influence things at the state level to impact the national election? That's some next-level political maneuvering.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a chess game. According to the article, he's been making calls, leaning on state senators, even got Lindsey Graham involved, all to convince Nebraska to switch to that winner-take-all system.
Wow, I bet that's not going over well with everyone in Nebraska.
You're right, it's causing quite a stir.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The article talks about how this is causing a political drama over there. State senators are getting pulled in both directions, facing backlash from voters. It's a mess. There's even one senator, Mike McDonnell. He's in a tough spot because he might run for mayor of Omaha next year.
Oh, wow. So you've got these national figures weighing in, state senators stuck in the middle, and a local election that could affect the entire country. It sounds like this Mike McDonnell is a key player in all of this.
He really is. And the article really highlights how much of pressure these state senators are under. They're making decisions that could have huge consequences.
Yeah, they're really feeling the heat. And you know what this whole situation with Nebraska really brings to light? It's the debate about the Electoral College. Is it actually fair? Does it truly reflect what people want?
It seems like that debate pops up every single election.
That's true.
Some say it gives too much power to a few swing states, while others are like, nope, it's crucial for checks and balances.
And this situation in Nebraska, it throws those arguments into sharp relief. We're talking about one state, maybe not even on most people's radar, potentially flipping the whole election. It makes you wonder if every vote really does hold the same weight. It really does make you think. Okay, so circling back to this Mike McDonnell guy, the senator who might run for mayor of Omaha, what's his take on all of this?
Well, the article says he's officially against switching to a winner-take-all system, but, and this is where it gets juicy, his office hasn't totally ruled it out.
So there's a chance he might flip-flop. What could make him do a 180 like that?
Think about his ambitions. He wants to be mayor of Omaha, right?
Yeah.
If he sides with Trump and the Republicans on this, it could earn him some points with certain voters, but it could also alienate others, especially in a city like Omaha that leans more Democratic.
Yeah, he's walking a tightrope for sure.
Big time.
Side with his party could hurt him in the mayoral race, break ranks, and he risks angering his own party and jeopardizing his political career.
Exactly. He's between a rock and a hard place. And this isn't just about McDonnell. The article really highlights the immense pressure all these state senators are facing.
Right.
They're being pulled in every direction, and their decisions could have major ripple effects.
It shows how these elections are so much bigger than just those big names at the top. Local dynamics, individual choices, they all play a role and can have these massive consequences on the national level.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that elections aren't just won and lost based on big speeches and national stories. They come down to individuals like Mike McDonald, each facing their own pressures and making calculations that could change everything.
So we've got this political thriller unfolding in Nebraska, and the whole country's watching. But how would this even work? Can they really change the rules this close to the election? What's the timeline here?
Well, they're definitely running out of time.
Yeah.
The article mentions Nebraska already sent out ballots to military and overseas voters last Friday. Then it's all the other mail-in ballots going out starting September 30th. So yeah, the clock is ticking.
To get this done before the election, they'd have to move fast. Let's say they do pull it off. What would it mean for the presidential race?
Now it gets really interesting. The article suggests that if Nebraska switches to winner-take-all, and assuming the polls are right, we could see a 269-269 tie in the Electoral College.
A tie? Hold on, now you've got my attention. How would that even work? What happens if neither candidate gets to 270?
It's not something people think about often, but it's right there in the Constitution. Electoral College tie. The House of Representatives decides.
So instead of voters, it comes down to politicians in Congress.
Pretty much, yeah. Each state delegation in the House gets one vote, doesn't matter how many representatives they have. And with how the House looks now, Republicans would likely have the upper hand if it went that way.
Man, this is giving me flashbacks to the 2000 election, all the recounts and legal battles. It seems like with stakes this high, this kind of situation is just asking for trouble.
You're not wrong. And the article doesn't just stop at Nebraska. It brings up Maine, too. They're the other state that splits electoral votes, and they could get dragged into this whole thing.
Hey, Maine. Really? What's happening over there?
So Democrats control the legislature in Maine right now. And there have been whispers that if Nebraska goes winner-take-all, Maine might do the same to counter it.
Wow.
Yeah, it could turn into this back and forth, both sides trying to outsmart each other in these two states that usually fly under the radar.
It's wild to think these two states, rarely getting this kind of national attention, could suddenly be at the center of everything, potentially determining the entire presidency.
It just shows how unpredictable our political system can be. Even small details, like how one state counts its votes, can have a massive impact.
It really is something else. Who would have thought Nebraska and Maine would be the states everyone's watching?
Right. It just goes to show how our system, all its moving parts, can come down to these little details. And it brings us back to the Electoral College, doesn't it? Is it really the best way to choose a president?
It's a question that's been around forever. And this whole Nebraska thing really highlights the criticisms, right? Like this idea that one or two states could have so much sway. Does that really fit with one person, one vote?
Exactly. It's a big point for critics. If we're saying every vote should matter equally, then this system, with its focus on swing states and electoral votes, well, it's going to raise some eyebrows.
Totally. And it's not just about a few states having an outsized impact. This thing where the House of Representatives might end up deciding each state getting one vote regardless of population, that doesn't really scream representative democracy, does it?
It's a valid point. Some argue that this system, which is super old, by the way, might not work for a country as big and diverse as the U.S. anymore. They look at elections like 2016, where the popular vote winner didn't become president, and they see a system that needs fixing.
So if this is raising such big questions about fairness, about representation, what are the arguments for keeping the Electoral College the way it is?
Well, those who like the Electoral College, they'd say it protects the smaller states. They'd argue that a straight popular vote would mean candidates only caring about big cities, ignoring the concerns of rural areas and less populated states.
So it's about making sure different parts of the country have a say, that one area doesn't call all the shots.
That's the argument. They might also say that the Electoral College, with its winner-take-all system in most places, it keeps things stable, makes it harder for fringe candidates to gain any real ground.
Interesting. So it's not just where the votes are, but also encouraging candidates to build wider support, appealing to a broader range of voters across different regions, backgrounds, all of that.
Exactly. Whether you buy those arguments or not, the Electoral College is complicated, no easy answers. And this Nebraska situation, the chance it could shake up the whole election, it makes us really confront those questions head on.
It's a lot to take in, that's for sure. We started with this unusual election rule in Nebraska, and now we're talking about the core of American democracy. It's funny how something that seems small can end up revealing these bigger issues, these tensions that are always bubbling beneath the surface.
Totally. Politics is never simple. It's all connected. Ideas, institutions, individual decisions, all shaping what happens in ways we can't always predict.
This deep dive has been fascinating. I mean, one electoral vote in Nebraska potentially choosing the next president. It really shows how much these local races matter, how important it is to understand the ins and outs of how we elect our leaders. It could be that the future of American democracy comes down to a handful of votes in a state most people couldn't even find on a map. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive. We'll be back next time with another look at the forces shaping our world.